you. So I'm curious, a few inner ponderings. How many of you have experienced in your life moments of violence, shame, or trauma? These could be moments that you hold on from secrecy of your family. It could be moments that you have of your own personal life or actions that you took against someone. And I am talking about the painful and the embarrassing ones. The deeper question here is, are you living your life through their discomfort? In this talk today, I'm going to ask you to dig a little bit inside yourself. I'm going to ask you to look into yourself a little deeper. I'll share a few stories to give you some perspective, and then my hope is that you walk away with a different way to look into the vapors of your past and to see a new way to look into your future. Back in the early 1980s, as a young woman, my husband left me because I was bad at sex. Okay, well, not really. He was gay. But I was 20. He was my only experience with sex, so it had to have been me, right? Something I want us to consider is that in our stories that we carry, there is a youthful inexperience that is part of what we remember. It is part of what we experienced at the time and what we knew, and it's part of us remembering it as an adult. My name is Sherry Williams, and I have spent much of my life traversing similar emotional situations of abuse, fear, loss, and addiction that many of you have had. I'm a certified life coach and a relatable life champion. You see, I was gifted with many contradictions in my life. A small, non-inclusive list looks something like this: child pawn, high school dropout, drug addict, prostitute, and then roofer, surveyor, landscaper, yoga teacher, street engineer, biologist, and physical scientist. Yes, I have had a life in full motion. All the experiences came to me, and they were all gifts. The darkest of times became a brilliance in their learnings. My own embarrassing and shameful stories allow me to see truly the struggles that you have or the difficult dialogue of your life. You see, there's nothing you can say that will shock or offend me. You can put it all out on the table. Most people believe that dealing with their suffering means stuffing it down into the dark corners of their human basement. But the reality is, they require the light to see the wisdom that lies in them, to see the truth. And it is not the truth of whether it happened or didn't happen. It is the wisdom in the truth that the event is trying to give you. Many of us would say that our life at home growing up was a hot mess of some shape and form. Mine was no different. On this particular mental day, I had had it emotionally. You see, my mother had come after me with a knife. She chased me around the house, but she wasn't trying to stab me. No, my mother was trying to put the knife into my hand so that I would stab her in her chest. I was able to escape at some point. I ran down to the pasture where my dad was on his tractor. Sobbing, I'm waving my hand saying, "Something's wrong with Mom." He came to me and we ran back to the house as I told him what had just happened. Less than 15 minutes, we're back in that house to find my mother sitting calmly on the couch, reading a magazine. My dad, puzzled, looks at me, sobbing, looks at my mother, staring up at him. How surreal. What was he to think? But what I felt, it was my fault. It had to be me. Dad could be happy if I wasn't there, right? Well, I ran away the following week. A few days later, I ended up in a runaway home shelter. I learned a lot while there. I learned some really valuable things that impressed upon me for the rest of my life. You see, in order to stay there, we had to get counseling, both individual and family together. During one of my individual sessions, the counselor told me that my mother exhibited classic signs of having been sexually abused. In an instant, I understood the hot mess of my mother. But also, I had been molested by my grandfather. No one knew. I was able to see how my mother had gone to her inner darkness as her way to survive. I had gone inward as well. I went to shame. I went to self-blame. I went to secrecy. But I didn't go to that darkness that my mother had chosen. At 16, I had far to go to come to the realization of the wisdom that comes from these moments. But I definitely learned one massive thing that all of us can take. And that is that you have no idea of what has happened to the person sitting next to you in their life. I believe these moments we have of suffering and trauma are called our dark wisdom. In ownership of our dark wisdom, we can find compassion and we can find strength. In embracing deep, dark wisdom, what we find is a truth. We find the compassion and the understanding because we know what it's like to have an alcoholic parent. We know what it's like to be abused. We have a deep knowing of what handcuffs feel like and what a prison cell smells like. It is what we take forward from those moments, and that is the strength and compassion that illuminating our dark wisdom can bring for us in the days that we live. It is the purpose we have the experiences that we have. It is to find that wisdom, carry it as a form of resilience, inspiration, and empowerment. What if you shift shame and trauma to be a strength in your life? With ownership, you will feel the shift turn to one of resilience, inspiration, and empowerment. With practice and over time, that shift from the inner dialogue starts to express itself in the outer world. And you show up with confidence. People sense it. They feel it in you. You walk around with a light. You don't have to say a word about what your stories are. No one has to know. It is because, though, you have addressed it and you're showing up and you inspire others just by the way you appear. I can guarantee you that as you move and continue through your life, there's going to be more stories. There's going to be more events that could cause potential upset. But you have this power, you have this knowing, you have this strength inside you. They are resilience, they are awareness, and they are humility. You survived. You made it. You have tools. resilience, because you know you've been there, you've risen. You no longer need to identify your life through those experiences. You have the awareness of what it is like to have been through there, that now you can apply the compassion as you go forward. You have the awareness that your past does not define the power that you hold today. And you do not let another person take your power from you. There is humility in the fact that you carry the burden, you've released it, and the shame, you see where it can take you, and you live fully in this strength and compassion every day of your life. Remember, you are not your stories. The stories that you hold in your basement, those shadows, are actually the strength of your foundation. They are what hold you up and help you to see the compassion and the strength that you carry for your life. Trauma, violence, and shame are not meant to hold you back. They're meant to help you rise. They're meant to help you see the illumination of your own dark wisdom. Thank you.